pink hoodie, pink shirt. Yeah. Yes.
Hey guys, talk at a very fast for a little bit, all right? Then we're going to talk and get a brief of the midterms. And so then we're going to talk about voting and participation. Is that better? Can you hear me? All right. So, all right. Okay, so one thing that I need for you guys to know is this is the long-term post-war midterm tendency in terms of House elections. Okay, this is the lost gain of House seats by President's Party from 1922 to 2018. Okay, do the presidents often gain seats in midterm elections? No, the President's Party tends to lose seats at midterm elections. Look at these across here at by tens. I mean, it's pretty obvious that that happens almost every time. We have two groups at 98 and 2, and that is President Clinton is incredibly popular in 98, more popular than he was in 96. Okay, when he gets elected, and then 2, George W. Bush is much more popular in 2002. Why? 9/11. And so. Sure, explainable. Also 34, we also see FDR is just increasing in popularity. But then, as you see, in 38, we have a pretty big adjustment. All right, so the midterm tendency in terms of Senate elections is not quite as stark for the President's Party, in part because districts are larger, they're more diverse. I mean, it's an entire state. Okay, and so the tendency is not quite the same. And if you look at this, there's been a number of times where the President's Party has gained seats. 2018, 2002, it's even in 98, 82, 70, 62, 34, right? Again, that's FDR. But there are definitely more, okay? The Senate tends to be a little bit more competitive, period. So we have 2 theories of presidential parties' midterm losses. This is the first question that I asked you in your questions today. What are the theories of presidential parties' midterm House losses? The one is a surge and decline theory. It's also known as coattails, right? And then the referendum theory as well. So surge and decline, all right? Presidential elections, we talked about this with the media, tend to bring people out. People who don't normally vote, people who aren't a Republican or a Democrat, but are independents, are libertarians, are weak Democrats or weak Republicans, okay? They come out and vote because there's a lot of attention around the election. However, during midterms, there's not nearly the media attention as there is during presidential elections. So in the presidential election, everything centers around the presidential race. And so therefore, there's a surge of people who are supporting the president who don't know anything about any of the other races, and they just vote for that party all the way through. All right? Then there's a decline. In midterm elections, those voters stay home. There's much less enthusiasm. In part because of the media, in part because they don't have a focal point, all of these reasons. The surge and decline in midterm elections. If we look at this percentage of the 2-party vote of independents, these are who I'm talking about, right? 57 to 43 in 2020. If they stay home, is that going to affect the President's Party in House elections? Absolutely, absolutely, okay? The president got a big lift from independents, independents are more easily swayable. And so therefore, there's going to be a decline. And with that decline, that means that the president can't count on those votes in the House. Referendum theory is different, okay? It has the same effect. We looked at the numbers, right? We just looked at the statistics. So we know that the president usually loses seats in his party in the House and Senate, usually, right? And there are two theories. The first I've just given you, and I think it just went out. The first I've just given you, the surge and decline theory. The second theory is referendum. And the referendum theory is basically this. People are saying, hey, we don't like what the president is doing. The president is who we are seeing all the time. And so therefore, it's a referendum on the way that the president is received generally. So two theories explaining why there's a vote or a seat loss in the House and Senate during midterms for presidents, generally speaking. So if we look at presidential approval rating from first year in office to second year in office, do presidents tend to do better during their first year or their second year? Their first year, they tend to lose points, right? They tend to lose points over time. Now, not always, and again, if we look at that 22, for example, we see what? George W. Bush, right? He goes up pretty dramatically. Okay. So in sum, in the 5 midterms in this period where the president's approval rating has been near or above 60%, the in party, that's the president's party, that's the Democrats, have either gained House seats or lost a minor number. You know, maybe just a small adjustment due to gerrymandering. And so that is going to be the case for why it's a referendum rather than what? Certain decline, right? We have two theories. Okay, and in the 8 midterms in this period where the president's approval has been below 50%, the in party, in this case, the Democrats, this year, have lost at least 26 House seats. That's a lot, right? Except Obama in 2014, he's only going to lose 13. There's also some things going on, right? We have increased the way that we have gerrymandered districts. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to Congress as well. But we've increased the way that we've gerrymandered districts so that seats tend to be safer. Remember our discussion about this when we talked about Robert Putnam? No, sorry, not Putnam. So I've lost my, it'll come back to me. Sorry about that. But we've talked about this when we talk about how we tend to group together, right? And because of that, also these gerrymandered districts, we have echo chambers, more and more people voting the same. So referendum theory would predict that Republicans will gain 25 to 30 seats in this midterm. That's the prediction for tomorrow, okay? Based upon these theories. That's ready? It's also possible that 2020 does not fit the model, okay? 2022 does not fit the model. And here's some reasons. This is also a referendum on the out party. Who's the out party? If Democrats are the in party, the out party is, okay? And so why would it also be a referendum on the out party? Because Donald Trump is still looming large in Republican politics. That is extremely unusual. It is extremely unusual for a defeated presidential candidate, defeated president to continue to be a major force. But it could be a referendum either way. So it's also a referendum on the out party. The Dobbs decision is another reason why 2022 is different, okay? We see the vote in Kansas, We see a couple of weird primaries in April. We see a special election in Alaska that goes a particular way, and those can all be laid at the feet of the Dobbs decision, right? Because the general public believes that the Supreme Court is pursuing a Republican agenda, and so therefore, it might also be a referendum on the Republican Party. Make sense? A little bit? Makes sense to you? All right. So Biden, Trump, and the Supreme Court. This is the favorability. Like I said, this is why this is a little weird. Biden's favorability is not great. It's under 50%, right? Not unusual. It's really not unusual in the second year. But it's at 44%. But Donald Trump, who is still looming large over the Republican Party as the possible opposite to Biden, is at 42. And his unfavorables are also higher. But look at the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court is actually what people are perceiving as the Republican Party's agenda, they're doing even more poorly. 40% approval, 58% disapproval of the Supreme Court. This is record numbers. Okay? Supreme Court has never been this disliked before. If we look at the generic two-party congressional vote, Republicans were way ahead. But their lead shrunk. Democrats went ahead, Republicans went ahead, Democrats went ahead. The congressional vote is at a toss-up, okay? So Republicans are not leading. That said, typically, because of the way that districts are structured in the United States, because of the population, Democrats usually need to be a +5 to +7 to actually gain seats on the generic ballot, popular overall, on the generic ballot, to gain seats in the House. And they are not there. It's a toss-up, all right? So should we still, by this generic two-party congressional vote, expect the Democrats to lose seats in the House? Is that what we should expect? Yeah, all of these so far saying, yeah, right? So we also have 35 Senate seats that are being contested in 2022. 21 seats are currently held by Republicans. 14 seats are currently held by Democrats. That's good for the Democrats because they have less to lose, right? But Democrats are only holding a 50-50 majority. Why do they have a 50-50 majority? Who's the majority? Peter?
Because the vice president breaks the tie.
Because the vice president breaks the tie, right? So they have a majority because of that. To retain their majority, they need to win 14 seats. They need to hold their 14. Or if they lose one of their 14, they need to pick up another one, right? To become the majority, Republicans need to win 22 seats. It's a little bit steeper of a climb, right? So, sorry. Oh, it isn't aware. There we go, fixed. If we look at this, the solid likely Republican seats are 16 of those. So we can say, hey, look, Republicans, 16 of them, you don't have to worry about, all right? Lean Republican, 3, toss up, 4, lean Dem, 3. If Democrats get their lean Dems and their solid likely Dems, that's 12. They still have to win half of the toss-ups. And then we're still worried about what?
Being split down the middle.
Being split down the middle, but also, what do we know about our two theories that we just talked about? You may lose seats because of surge and decline, right? And so the Democrats are in a tough spot, okay? They're in a tough spot in both the House and Senate. So these are our seats that lean Democratic. Mark Kelly, I don't know where that Michael Bennett went over there. Michael Bennett and Maggie Hassan. These are more lean Democratic seats. Peter, how are they doing?
I think They're doing pretty good. I know that the toss-ups are like crazy close.
All right, so the lean Democrats, maybe the Democrats can sleep a little easy, but they're still wanting people to do what? Vote, right? Okay, the toss-ups, however, are in fact, as Peter said, crazy. In Georgia, we have Raphael Warnock, who is going against Raphael Warnock. Herschel Walker, right? What's Herschel Walker famous for? Football is what he's famous for, okay? So he's famously a running back for Georgia, right? Right, in the state of Georgia. This is pretty good for Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker, however, is not a great candidate, right? He has, as was said in the front row, a few scandals to overcome. And so, for that reason, Raphael Warnock is still looking pretty good in Georgia, but it's close. In Nevada, Catherine Cortez Mastro, she was not expected to be a toss-up, and she is now a toss-up. What happened in that race? You know, Peter?
I know.
Okay, in Nevada, she was not expected to be a toss-up, but there's a particularly good candidate on the Republican side. And this particularly good candidate is giving her a run for the money. Now, as I pointed out, Herschel Walker is not a great candidate. Okay, he's great in name recognition and general, like, hey, we're Georgia, therefore we love Herschel Walker, right? That's good for him. But in other ways, he's not such a great candidate, okay? In Nevada, we have someone who's a great candidate on the Republican side, and so it's a toss-up. In Wisconsin, Ron Johnson is the Republican senator for Wisconsin. He is incredibly, yes, unpopular, all right? So he's pretty unpopular, but his opponent is, anyone know? Mandela Barnes, the other Mandela, right? And he does not have much in terms of name recognition. In Pennsylvania, it's an open seat. Who's running in Pennsylvania? I know you guys know. I'll give you a hint. One of them is very tall, and the other one has a television show. Dr. Oz and John Fetterman, okay? So Dr. Oz is running on the Republican ticket, and John Fetterman is running on the Democratic ticket. Fetterman's pretty popular. He was lieutenant governor, and he's a pretty popular guy, but he has some problems. One, he had a stroke in May, right? And so while he's currently recovering from that stroke, it makes him not as quick on his feet. Dr. Oz has some problems. What's some of Dr. Oz's problems? Anyone know? What? He did in fact kill puppies. That's the problem. So you know our ad about
His religion.
about killing puppies. Eric pointed out there's also maybe a religion question. He's a Republican nominee, but he is in fact Muslim. He also has dual citizenship between Turkey and the United States. And so there's some stuff going on with Dr. Oz. All right. So Florida, we have some lean Republicans. We have Marco Rubio. How's Marco Rubio feeling today? Good? Strong? Nervous? Right? You know, he's done great. His opposition, his Democratic candidate, is a great quality candidate, right? Former police chief, Val Demings, she's amazing, right? But Marco Rubio has been senator for a while and has a lot of name recognition. North Carolina, who's running? It's currently a Republican seat. Beasley is the Democrat. Bud is the Republican. It's leaning Bud, right? And then Ohio, who's running? J.D. Vance and Tim Ryan. And J.D. Vance is famous for writing just so you know, not social science correct book about the last election, but he's incredibly famous. And so J.D. Vance is running versus Tim Ryan. All right, so this is where it is. If the Senate elections were held today and if polls are predicting the results would be this. It's just too close to call. So that's tomorrow, right? It's too close to call today. So why are Republicans at risk at not capturing control of the Senate? We would expect for them to do so. But early in the year, Republicans were absolutely favored, but Dobbs has made a major impact on this. The Dobbs decision, where the Senate is the one who decides on who Supreme Court justices are, it has made the decision. There's also been a rise in Biden's approval rating. He's gone up like 4 or 5 points. This is helpful for it, or for them. And then vulnerable Republican candidates in races that Republicans were favored to win and still could win. Walker, Oz, Vance, and Masters in Arizona. Well, Bud in North Carolina, but Bud less so. But these first 4 are backed by Trump and the GOP candidate, but are not great candidates. They have a lot of flaws. And in a statewide race, it's a lot harder to cover that up. And they're facing really good candidates, right? Even in states that are going to favor one party, that can make a difference. Polls in recent elections have tended to underestimate the Republican vote. So polls have been, with an algorithm, skewed to amplify Republican voices. The question is, are they telling the truth? So is this what it actually looks like? Or did they go too far? Unclear. And Republicans have gained ground in the last couple of weeks, but there's also the luck factor. In 1980, Republicans won control of the Senate for the first time in 3 decades. And they won it when they had 7 seats that were flipped from one party to the other by a margin of 52 to 48 or less. The luck factor is also known as turnout. If people turn out to vote, it makes a difference in an election. All 7 seats were won by the Republican candidate, and so if all those toss-ups go to the Democrats or all those toss-ups go to the Republicans, it's luck, right? A factor affecting all candidates is also the enthusiasm gap. That's the gap between the eagerness of one party to vote versus another party to vote. And this is what it looks like. Enthusiasm gap in recent midterms. In 2018, you have D plus 40 in those midterms. The enthusiasm gap was massive for the Democrats, and it was 8 vote difference, right? Or an 8 seat difference, sorry. Here in 2014, Republican had the enthusiasm plus 13. They win 16 seats. In 2010, they have an enthusiasm gap of 63, and they win 63 to 15. And then Democrats in 2006, D has an enthusiasm gap. They're leading the enthusiasm gap 30. They win 11 seats. All right. Sorry, I keep missing that button. So if you look at what the gap is right now, pretty low, not much of a gap at all. Whereas early 61-48 in March, that was much better for the Republicans. And then there are things like governor's races, right? In Virginia in 2021, we have Glenn Youngkin, a Republican governor, when he wins the race in a pretty blue state. Virginia's pretty blue. So why does Youngkin win? Does anybody know? Because of critical race theory. He says, hey, the schools are out there pushing critical race theory, and they want to undermine your ability to teach your kids what you want. And the Democratic incumbent responds stupidly, frankly, right? Because Youngkin makes the case, hey, look, parents should make the decisions about education. And he says, parents don't know anything about education, right? Yeah, look at that face. You're like, oh man, why do you say that, right? Okay, it may be true, but you don't say it out loud, right? And so, but the question is, when we talk about this, parents were really mad. What do you mean I shouldn't have a say in my kid's education? Because I think we all agree that parents should have a say in their kids' education, and you lose it because it's a local question. That's what's going on in Virginia at the time. Now, 2022, in Oklahoma, polls are extraordinarily close in a very red state. Why? National issues? Yeah.
So I think I've been kind of like watching how state's chances have changed over the last few months. And
Like at first on 538 for Senate, it said that he was like extremely favored to win, basically like over a 99 and 100 chance. And that has gone down to like 90 and 10 between him and Joy Hoffmeister. And I think a lot of it has to do with like after the Supreme Court decision, our abortion laws that went into effect, people have really strong opinions about that. And just like statistics show that the majority of Oklahomans, regardless of party affiliation, are actually for reproductive rights. So I think that maybe has caused some changes in people's support or lack of support for them.
Okay. So the Dobbs decision and also Oklahoma laws on abortion, reproductive rights.
Also, he's made a lot of people very angry by, fighting with the tribes, and there's been a lot of like, corruption scandals, that kind of thing, and so.
Okay, second issue, the tribes. Anybody else got anything else? Go ahead.
it's very like public education rule, under rule states, not everybody's for the private.
Okay. So the incumbent is a Republican, Governor Stitt, and he is facing three major pushes against his incumbency, right? One is the abortion laws that went into effect after the Dobbs decision. Number two is the tribes, fighting with the tribes. The Native American tribes may only be 2% in the United States, but in Oklahoma, it's 14, right? That's 14% of the electorate. And, people who are affiliated in work, we jump up even further, right? And then number three, vouchers would kill rural schools, right? This is kind of this is the belief of people in rural schools. And so his advocacy for private school vouchers mean that there are three major local issues, just like with Youngkin in Virginia, that make it more likely that he loses. Now, is he still favored to win? Yes, right? Oklahoma is, the very first thing that we look at is the baseline, right? But there has been a lot of chatter, and it looks like a lot of Republicans are switching to vote for Hoffmeister. Yeah.
There's 425,000 more Republicans than are Democrats, just a little thing.
There are 425,000 more Republicans than are Democrats, therefore naturally lean to the right. But, enough people switch or stay home and it makes a difference. All right. So when we talk about participation in voting generally, okay, we have a perennial problem. I think this is maybe the second question on your questions. One is that people have unequal voice. We have unequal access to resources. We have unequal access to education, right? We have elite access of educated class, business, and professions who can access more easily, these resources. Okay, and there's also fatalism among the less elite. What do I mean by that? Fatalism among the less elite.
Well, that's gonna go this way.
Well, it's gonna go this way, so there's no point in voting. Well, Oklahoma's a red state, why should I vote if I'm a Democrat? Well, New York is a blue state, why should I vote if I'm a Republican? Right? Fatalism among the less educated. And then we also have the free rider problem, which is, why should I do anything? Right? I've gotten this far without doing anything, it hasn't made a difference. It's fine. everything's fine, right? And we don't participate. We don't participate. I want it to be noted that in the state of Oklahoma, there are over 3 million people who are eligible to vote. And the number of people eligible who have registered to vote in the state of Oklahoma are 2.1 million. That's significant. A third of the population who is eligible to vote has not even registered to do it. In 2020, 55% of the registered eligible voting percentage voted. 55%. So let's cut that again. That means 1 million people, right? What's that linked to? Education, right? But also this fatalism. What difference does it make? My vote doesn't matter. Your vote does matter. By the way, tomorrow is election. We can use our voice through voting. It's the most egalitarian form of participation. It does not matter that I am a billionaire and you are a student who is having trouble paying your rent. Our vote counts exactly the same. One vote, one person. Now, there's a whole set of questions that we'll do later, but in this classroom, if we live in the same district, if we live in the same state, our vote counts the same. Okay? It's the most egalitarian form of participation, but it is skewed at the individual level. By income, people who make more vote more often. People who are more educated vote more often. People who are older vote more often. People who are employed full-time at a professional salary job vote more often. People who are married vote more often. And people who have strong social networks, they belong to a church, they belong to the Rotary Club, they belong to a softball league that they go play with, right? Any of those things. People with strong social networks are also more likely to vote. Why is that? Any ideas? Are any of you a member of a club at the University of Oklahoma? Look at that. Your social networks are already helping you. Join a club or a team. These are social networks too. There are barriers to voting, and Edgardo is going to give this lecture on Wednesday. So I'm just going to throw this up here, but he's going to talk about it a lot on Wednesday, and I'm going to skip past it. Okay. But participation past voting is also an issue. It's even more skewed. It's even more skewed than voting. So we have magnified voice through financial donations. How many of you donated to a political candidate this year? Let's see, Eric and Peter. Huh. That's skewed. Lobbying resources. Okay. How many of you are a member of some organization that also has a lobbying arm? Well, you're all students at the University of Oklahoma, and the University of Oklahoma has a lobbyist. So there's that. But you're not aware of that.
Advocate.
It's a lobbyist. Time to participate. Now, this is where you guys actually do have time. You have time in a different way than other people do. Your time is not structured the same as someone who is working a minimum wage job, right? And if they take off work, they don't get paid. Okay, now technically you have to allow someone 2 hours to get off work to go vote, but you don't have to pay them for it, which is one of the differences. But time to participate also means things not just like voting, but also being active in campaigns. How many of you have ever volunteered or done anything for a political campaign? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. And I'm not counting Aaron and Peter this time. Okay. So 5. So your voices matter more too, because you actually get to talk to the candidate, right? it makes a difference because they actually do care what people think. But the truth is, you guys, I want you to think about this, okay? It is really hard to listen to statistics. I can listen to you tell me something, and I can say, oh, that's a real concern, right? I can look at statistics about, you know, what people generally think, and I don't know those people. Okay? It makes a difference. People say things like, well, nobody ever called me on a poll, right? Ability to see the impact of your participation, right? If you show up somewhere and you get a sign or a t-shirt, or you get $5, or you go vote and you get an I voted sticker.
In the shape.
And so, Eric is lobbying that Oklahoma needs I voted stickers in the shape of Oklahoma, which would be much better, it's true, all right. As they are, they're pretty oval, but the point is you still get one, hey, that's swag, all right, so that's what we do right now. But the point is, if you can see that your participation matters, right? If you go out and one district changes to the way that you want it to be and you voted, it's easy. But, or you see that the gap gets narrower. But if it looks the same every single time, if the policies stay the same every single time, if you write letters and nothing happens, if you visit and nothing happens, if you give $1,000 check, maybe things happen. If you go talk to somebody in their office, maybe things happen. Confidence versus favoritism. I am confident that my participation matters. I want you guys all to say it, you ready? I am confident that my participation matters. Ready? Good. Now you can confidently go out there and participate in whatever way. Okay? Don't be fatalistic. Don't be fatalistic because then you absolutely lose. Your knowledge in this class is going to help you participate more. That's the whole goal. The whole goal. There are different pathways to participation. This is a classic in political science by Verba, Schlossman, and Brady, right? I read the whole thing multiple times as a graduate student. It's very old. But basically it says, look, resources are all important. There is absolutely money. Money matters. But there's also time. You guys have some time that other people don't have right now. Also, being middle class or working a salary job means that you have more time than people who work hourly jobs. You do. And number 3, knowledge. I cannot give you money or time. But I can give you knowledge. This book, these resources, the University of Oklahoma can give you knowledge. And you can use those to participate in ways that affect things that you care about. One way to do this is to acquire civic skills, right? You can do that through education, high school, college, through work, all right? How many of you, well, possibly none of you, but how many of you have ever been involved in a union vote? Anyone? Unlikely. Oklahoma is a right work state, Texas is a right work state. But there are unions, right? And sometimes we learn how to participate through work, through governance in this way. You'll see this through professional organizations also. You'll have an opportunity to vote on the direction of your profession. Through volunteering. How many of you have volunteered? Not on the football campaign, just generally. Your numbers are a little lower. Your numbers are a little lower than they have been before. And I think a lot of that was COVID, honestly. I think it kept you guys from being able to volunteer as well. But you learn how you can make an impact by volunteering, right? If you work for Habitat for Humanity, you actually see the house it got built. You did that, right? Even though you kind of inexpertly hammered in 7 boards, and they're a little crooked. We still did it, right? It still matters, it's still standing. Through religious communities, through your tabernacle, through your temple, through your church, through your cathedral, through your mosque, through your gathering of friends, all right? You learn how to do this. How many of you have ever had a vote in your church, in your religious organization? I know you, if you, so, okay, all right, there we go. And they exist, and this is how we learn. We learn to participate in this way. And then there's civic organizations, the Rotary Club, the Elks Club. We'll talk about all those in a minute. Recruitment also through social networks, okay? A lot of times people run for office or people start participating in a committee because they know somebody. I have a friend who served on the Norman Library Board because she kept going to the mayor and saying, hey, I really want to serve somehow, or I think I'm going to leave Norman because I want to have a voice and participate. And the mayor was like, here's a board for you to be on. Right? This is seriously how you get into places. Social capital is a part of that. So Bob Putnam writes about social capital. Why Putnam was on my mind earlier. These are these norms and networks of reciprocity and trust. Right? We talked about this earlier, right? But this idea that, hey, look, I'm going to lend you a cup of sugar, not because I expect you to pay me back for that cup of sugar, but because you need it. I'm going to ask you to check and make sure that my sprinkler system isn't malfunctioning. I'm going to ask you for a ride because my car is flooded. I'm going to see if I can, get you to record something for me because I'm, not able to make it class today. Right? It overcomes the free rider problem, because we feel connected. Maybe I only feel connected to these 10 people, but I feel connected to them. It also cultivates participation, because maybe one of them is active in an organization and they ask you to go along. Maybe as an organization, like book club, for example, gives money for meals every month to friends for food and shelter, which we never would have done if we weren't in a group together raising money to do that. Civic participation and volunteering is going to build social capital. But Putnam is going to document its decline. He's going to say, from the 1960s, we basically see it declining, right? And in just a second, I'll talk about Scottsville. She tells us why. But so how do we cultivate it? Knowledge and education, volunteering and service learning, whether that's youth groups, high school experiments, your labs on Fridays, service in the AmeriCorps or Peace Corps or the military. These are all ways to cultivate this. It's a positive cycle of civic engagement. Scotchpole says, hey, look, I see a problem. And the problem I see is that we're not engaging. So she starts with a hunch. She says, we used to be in more civic organizations. And she said, what we find out is this. We used to have 60 large, hold on, I'm going to get this, 60 large membership organizations that had a local level, a federal level, and a national level. All of these did. And so we understood the structure of government because these organizations we were in, like the Boy Scouts, had the same structure, or the Red Cross, or I was a member of the Elks. My father took me to the Elks Club and said, hey, look, you should be a member of the Elks Club. I said, why should I be a member of the Elks Club? And he said, because it's more appropriate now that you're a lawyer in this community to be part of this. And I said, okay. And I became an elk. And they said, Huckabee, do you bring blood here? He was very hokey. And he said, I do. They pinned an elk's pin on me, right? But it's also kind of cool, right? That I was part of this. And I told Dita Scottsville about this while she was writing this, and she said, that's crazy. She goes, young people don't get involved in these things anymore. These things are dying. Because instead, what we have done is we have started just writing checks or clicking, donate $5. And so I care about the whales. Here's $10 to be a teacher. Right? Instead of meeting people. And it makes a difference. Leaders are going to rise within the ranks. People are going to buy in across classes. And so plumbers are sitting next to bankers, right? It's going to increase citizen voice, and there's going to be increased responsiveness of government while these groups are alive. You see, the American Legion is responsible for the GI Bill because what was proposed in Congress was that those people who had been made officers during World War II would have the opportunity to have college. The American Legion lobbied and said, hey, I think all veterans should have that option. And they were effective, and it made a difference, and it strengthened the middle class. We have diminished democracy because these large membership associations have disappeared. Government is much less responsive to average citizens. Eric, will you take roll?
Yes.
So how do we create a 21st century version? We can revitalize political democracy. Maybe social media can be re-engineered to create new forms of civic association rather than civic division. And attendance is live. There are also tax and election reforms that we can do. So maybe we don't vote on Tuesdays, right? Maybe we use absentee ballots. Maybe we give tax incentives for voting or for these group memberships. Maybe we have a national election holiday. These are all possible reforms. Fix gerrymandering. Change the presidential vote. I'm going to leave you guys with one thing, okay? This is the Dunning-Kruger effect. People's lack of knowledge and skill in an area cause them to overestimate their own competence, which means that they're overconfident. People say, hey, I know stuff, and I know the most stuff. The bottom 25% in a skill area are the ones who are most likely to think they're the best at it. At the same time, those people who are experts underestimate it because everybody can do this, so they don't need to talk about it. They think it's easy. So everybody can do it. I want you guys to think about that in terms of democracy and what that means. And I was going to take a poll, so we'll save it.